Hello there, my name's Joe, and you're watching Bourbon Battles. Hey, we've got a special episode for you today. I want to tell you about an amazing opportunity that you can only get because you watched this video. So stick with us. Okay, so here we go. So what am I talking about? What's all the hype about? We're going to talk to you today about the Stave and Thief Society. You see their email address right there. There's their logo there. There's their logo on my hat, and there's probably one on the screen over here somewhere. So you find these guys at staveandthief.com. What the Stave and Thief Society is, it's a group of people. It's an organization that have created this education that surrounds whiskey in general, and I think it's fair to say specifically bourbon, right? So they offer these different courses. We're going to get into that. They've got, I'll call a cheap course and an expensive course. So I would highly recommend you actually watch this video and consider one of these courses. I got to take one. I wouldn't be talking to you about it if I didn't think it was an awesome thing. So the two courses they offer is a certified bourbon steward course and an executive bourbon steward course. The executive bourbon steward course is the one that I took. So let's start off with the certified bourbon course. It's a $75 online course, do it at your own pace, the whole 9 yards. So, and yes, I'm going to read from this a little bit, I know. So the key things that they're covered in that course: what makes a bourbon? What makes it different from all the other whiskeys all around the world? What are different descriptors of bourbon mean? What do they mean? What's that all about? What's the science behind distilling and aging bourbon? Why do we put it in new charred oak barrels? All that good stuff. We're going to identify Kentucky's heritage brands and who makes what, right? You're going to get into Heaven Hill and Jim Beam and all that good stuff. Buffalo Trace. And you're going to be able to build a flight of 3 bourbons. This is critical. Build a flight of 3 bourbons and demonstrate the relationship among those products, describing their characteristics and nuances along with tasting notes, right? So that's really cool, right? You're going to learn about that. If you've never sat down and put a lot of effort into building a flight of bourbon, it's a really fun thing to do, right? I love to host people, have them come over and do a blind flight. I always do it blind. Including in this course, you'll get a handbook and the Cross and Thieves lapel pin. I'll show you that here momentarily. Okay, so now, that one is $75. How many bottles of whiskey do you own that were $75? And by the way, if you're wondering what I'm sipping on, one of my favorite whiskeys. Stick through to the end to find out what's in here. So the next course we want to talk about, the Executive Bourbon Steward course. You want to take it up a notch. You want to really grow your knowledge of bourbon and everything that comes with it. Consider this one. Now, I'm going to tell you it's $495, but wait. Use discount code BBB15, Bourbon Battlesblind 15, and you get 15% off of that. So that comes out to roughly $420. It's a lot of money to spend on a class for bourbon. You can do it online, or you can do it in Louisville, Kentucky at their headquarters. I did it online. Really cool thing. There are over 2,500 executive bourbon stewards that have completed this course. It's a really, really cool program. With that, you can gain the knowledge to be able to speak confidently about bourbon, Kentucky's native spirit bourbon. You're going to learn a lot about that, so you can hold a conversation. People are going to understand you know what you're talking about when you complete this course. Self-guided is more popular than in person, but like I say, you have that option. Over 6 hours of instructional videos if you decide to do that online. And then there's work that comes with it along the way. There's different things you do with this sensory kit, which we'll talk about here in just a minute, that really expand your knowledge, if you will. It's going to give you all the tools you need to do creative flights. It's going to take it up a notch from that introductory course and really you're going to really be able to start engaging those sensory experiences, which is where this kit will come in place, and you really start picking out those tasting notes. So what are they going to talk about in that? Let's give you an overview. I don't want to spoil anything for you if you're thinking about taking this. Whiskey classification. What makes bourbon unique, right? What's the difference between bourbon and whiskey and light whiskey and American whiskey and Irish whiskey and Scotch and so on and so on and so on. What's the science behind the distillation and the aging? We talked about that a minute ago. An overview of bourbon production practices and the equipment that they use. If you're, I don't know, like mechanically inclined person, I really enjoyed that. If you will as well. One of my favorite parts, the history of America's national spirit, bourbon. So good. So it goes into that. It's in depth, and if you want even more, there's plenty of avenues to go down. But I've watched a lot of things, done a lot of research, read some books. This is a really, really good history of bourbon. I really enjoyed it. The sensory and aroma training, what you're going to get with this course, this comes with it. This is part of it. This is why I think if you're a serious connoisseur or collector of bourbon, I think this is why it's worth the $420 spend, right? This sensory kit, which has, I believe, 40, I don't have my glasses on, 36 different aromas in here. I think if you go buy this by yourself through them, it's over $200. I want to say it's closer to $250. I'll put it on the screen there. This is worth having if you're really into whiskeys and different things and want to learn that stuff. So when you consider this into the price, it's not too bad at all. So please take that into consideration. We're going to talk about how to educate consumers in a friendly and engaging way, right? Are you a bartender? Do you work in a restaurant? That is really going to help you in that aspect. You're going to learn how to do these tastings, right? And that's one of my favorite things, right? There's so many different themes you can do. There's so many different things you can do. And this is going to really help you hone in on that. Not only, you don't just say, we're going to do, I don't know, a Jim Beam portfolio or a Heaven Hill portfolio lineup from proofs low to high. You're going to be able to speak to those and the nuttiness. And don't hesitate to get this out with your guests too and let them, oh, do you smell that? Do you smell the heads and the tails and the different esters and all this stuff, right? So I want to look at one of these because I think it's so cool. I'll just pick one here. 25 happens to be caramel, right? This one's an easy one that most people get. But if you think you're getting caramel in your whiskey and you can't really figure out what that note is, you can go through a bunch of these and really hone in on it. Like say there's 36 of these, the caramels and, that kind of stuff, the bananas and the vanillas, that's cool. The tobacco and leather has really helped me check it out in this. But what I find really interesting is the corn and the rye and the wheat and the alcohols, the methanol, the heads, the hearts, and the tails. They're all in there. They give an amazing example of why they're all in there in this course. So those are the things. Furfural was one of the most interesting things I learned about. So this is basically half the price of the class, right? So when you take that into consideration, it's very, very reasonable, folks. So with that, you get the Bourbon Steward Handbook, which is what I have here. I think it's soft bound now. I have a hard bound, but this is worth going back and reviewing time and time again. There's different things that I've gone back and looked at. Like I said, the 36-piece sensory kit. Upon completion, you do have to take a test. When you complete the course, you will have to take a test, and there's work as you go along to make sure you're very well prepared for that. I will say this. I was very surprised. I was talking to Jordan when we set out to do this. Jordan works for Stave and Thief, and I said, hey, man, I can probably just take the test and pass, right? I want to go through it, and he's kind of giggled at me. He's like, oh, yeah, sure. I went through it. No. This is really cool. You don't know what you don't know, and you're going to realize that you've learned a lot. So upon completion, you get this little setup mailed to you. You have to pass first. There's a lapel pin here and a challenge coin. I'll put some pictures up on the screen here. Really cool, right? This is, I just saw a thing on Facebook the other day. There was a gentleman at one of, if not the most popular distillery in Kentucky, right? Tour guide kind of thing. And he had one of these lapel pins on his hat, right? Which means he's taken the course, which I think is super cool. I engaged with a gentleman at a distillery in Indiana because he was wearing it, the lapel pin on his hat in the distillery. Makes for very interesting conversations. If I'm not mistaken, the challenge coin, you only get that when you take the executive bourbon steward class. Some other neat stuff, right? You can go on their website and that you see here. You can buy some really cool stuff like this hat, t-shirts that I've got, a Glencairn. I've got a Glencairn somewhere. I should have used it today instead of my Purdue Boilermakers rocks glass, right? And if you're wondering, yes, you can give this for a gift, right? You can get gift certificates in their online store to take care of that. Totally up to you. This is very cool. So I talked to Jordan not long ago. We've been running our discount, which you see the discount code here. We've been running this for, I don't know, a few months last year. Into this year, we've had a numerous amount more people sign up for this using our discount code than I would have guessed. So if you're one of those people, I'd love to hear from you. Love to hear from you. So let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you've taken it all, please leave me a comment. What do you think about the course? Either course. Again, I can't stress it enough. It's well worth your time. It was fun the whole way through. I learned a lot. There is a little work involved. It's not overbearingly hard. You do have to think a little bit. The test is not easy, but you don't need to cram for it for a week, right? So keep all that in mind. Check it out. For the price of a bottle of whiskey, you can take the Certified Bourbon Steward course. Highly, highly recommend that, if nothing else. Executive Bourbon Steward course. When you factor in the price of this bad boy, it's not that bad. So check it out. Let me know what you think. If you're wondering what we got here, this is one of my favorite ryes, and I'm going to go back to what I think here. So these notes that I get, particularly on the nose and the palate. So there's this note, and I think I know what it is, but I want to verify. So I'm going to go to my chart here, and I'm going to start looking through these. So maybe a little caramel, which is not surprising. Maybe a little herbal, so let's check that out. And I'm going to go up here to rye because, I already know it's a rye, so I want to check that out. And actually butter. I was going to say butterscotch, but let's check that out. So as I nose through these and taste through that, don't drink these. So this, number 15, is rye. This is really grainy and everything because it is just the rye. So you go back and you can pick that out of there. It's so cool. So that would help you determine if, like I say, I already knew it was a rye, but that would help you determine, is this a rye? I think it's a rye. So you can go back. And this one is caramel, which we already looked at earlier. Oh, yeah, definitely some of those notes. Definitely some of those notes in there. And this is what's going to be interesting to me. 29 is herbal. Now, that is something I wouldn't have said that, hey, this has herbal tasting notes until I did that. So I just learned something about this expression, one of my favorites, and I'm going to rye whiskeys. So I never associated those herbal notes with it before. And the last one I want to look at, butter. Yeah, so I associate that with butterscotch, right? So you'll learn that some people's terminology is different. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. So I would now describe this as rye, spicy, and you can look back here too, right? The clove and the cinnamon and the rye with these butterscotch notes that are really prevalent on the palate, and the herbal notes, gin-like notes, are very strong in this one. I wish they did have some different things. This is a finished rye, to pick out different finishes, right? So, and you maybe I'll make your own of that. But I'm drinking minor case rye from the down there in Kentucky from the good folks that make Yellowstone bourbon. So good. It's one of my favorite ryes. So make sure you check that. If you don't own a bottle, it's very inexpensive. So, hey, like we like to say, drinking bourbon's supposed to be fun. Do it with your friends. Do it responsibly. Check out Stave and Thief Society. Hey, and whatever you do, don't drink and drive. Catch you next time.
Drink, don't drive, do the watermelon crawl.